So pretty much all throughout the dieting phase, I was using the stepper, and the gym I use at has the stepper on the second floor, so it overlooks a boxing ring. And when I was younger, like in my teens, I did a bit of boxing for about a year until they threw me into the sparring, and I just kept getting beaten up quite badly. So I decided to stop it because they kept putting me in with the big guys, and I was like 55, 50, 60 kilos, and they put me in with like 80, 90 kilo persons. I'd hit them, nothing would happen. They'd hit me, and I'd be sent flying. So then I kind of just sacked it off. I thought, I'm just going to stick to weight training until I get bigger. Anyway, so I was watching these. Every time I'm on the stepper, there's always like a one-on-one combat coach class, like either kickboxing or just boxing normally. And I was thinking, this looks so fun. I was like, if I wasn't doing, like, I'm using the stepper because it's just an easy way to kind of track your cardio. I was like, this is such a great way of doing it. I thought, I'm going to Bali after when I'm in consolidation, I'll be in Bali. And I thought Bali is a great place for MMA, boxing, Muay Thai. I thought, whilst my strength is coming back to normal, because once you're shredded, like your strength is a bit all over the place, and training isn't actually that fun. I thought until my body weight comes up to a point where strength is improving again, why not throw myself into a challenge where I just book a bunch of boxing classes? So I've already scoped out a few gyms when I land in Bali, and I think I'm going to do a couple of weeks of boxing and see how I go, just to add a bit more fun into my training whilst the body's recovering from all the abuse it's been given in the last couple of months. So yeah, just thought I'd share that sentiment. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I think I've been in those same shoes many a time actually, and I think it's normally come to me either at the end of a hard diet where, like you said, performance has started to drop off, and maybe you're not having quite as much fun. Like all of your focus being to this one goal, which potentially is like a photo shoot or something, and you just want to get a bit more fun back into it. And as much as you love your resistance training, is maybe just wanted to do something that's maybe like a bit more athletic or a bit more competitive, or just add a bit more spice to it. So you're coming out of consolidation into consolidation now. My last consolidation, I was down at a jiu-jitsu club, tried that for a little bit. I think I've said to you guys before, I've been about 4 different of those kind of like MMA gyms over the time. And again, I kind of was just getting beaten up by kids, girls, whatever, just getting punched in the face. So it never really stuck for that long. But I think if people going into investment phase, I think so often they view it as, right, now it's got to be hardcore muscle building, it's bodybuilding, and that can definitely be one route. But the reality is, like, really, it's you just want to build on what you've done so far, and whether that's building muscle solely, or you want to build muscle and do some more competitive sport, or you just want to maintain your muscle and look at lifestyle stuff. Like there's endless amounts of roads you can go down, but some of them maybe just not quite as obvious at first glance.
I think it's also like when you're dieting really hard, we say that you got to stick to the same program, and it's really important you do stick to the same program because you want your indicator lifts to be a reflection of where you're at with muscle retention, etc. I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, I don't know how I kept on to strength for so long, and I don't think I realized what level of psych I was using just to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as I came into consolidation, the idea of lifting that weight, I was like, there's no way I'm lifting that. Like I was just using so much psych to get there. And I almost felt like my strength dropped massively now, but it's probably just an element of like, I did that like oomph isn't there. And the need to like want to go there isn't there right now. For me, I've just like pushed my reps up a bit. I've kept pretty much the same routine, but I've just pushed my reps up a bit and added a bit more volume. But it just got and because of that, you're not lifting anywhere near the normal loads, and you just got to go through this process of waiting, right? But I was just reflecting the other day. I was like, I don't know what I was doing to like try and lift those weights, but there's no way I'm going there again, like for a while. And I think that's another interesting thing and that's where these challenges can be good, because it can give that sort of fresh element to your training whilst you can still maintain the other stuff.
Yeah, no, I think what both of you boys are touching on really well is that after you've gone, there's a similar pattern here, and this is the pattern I want anyone who's listening to understand. When you are going through the fat loss process and where the goal is to transform the physique, okay, the goal is very, very linear, or not linear, but it's very predictable, right? You have a tangible goal. You can push hard when you need to push hard, and that's where you're probably mustering that crazy strength from, you know what I mean? And or even though you have more food coming in now, you can't cultivate that same push because now you don't have a real tangible goal. And this is where so many people struggle when they hit their checkpoint, because all they've been thinking about for months, for years, is finally I'm going to get to my physique, and then I'll have everything in the world. And you realize that's not actually true. You don't get anything. You don't get a reward for having abs. You don't get a reward for being lean. What you do get, though, is that you've shown to yourself that you can really push the boundaries, you can push the limits, and that's brilliant. But when you come out of that, this is why you need a plan of attack. You need to understand that as you come out of this phase, you need to ask yourself, okay, what the heck do I want to do with my body now? And this is the question that I don't think many people ask themselves, because they think, oh, cool, once I get there, I'm just going to just keep training and stay lean. No, that doesn't work that way. Do you know what I mean? When you come out of a hard diet and you finally got the fat loss you've always wanted, this is the time where now you can go down certain paths. And this is where, when you approach it from a performance aspect, this is when consolidation or investment, this is where investment can become so fun. If I track back to why my investment was so successful after my diet, was because I cultivated this love for cycling throughout that entire prep, and that just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And I don't advocate people doing a ton of cardio during their fat loss phase, because it's unproductive for most. But what it did for me was it actually made me realize, wow, I actually really like cardio. Potentially because I'm quite good at it too. I have a natural propensity to be really good with cardio stuff. But I knew that, okay, once I come out of investment, I'm really going to focus on getting my cardiovascular fitness up super high. And I can do that now because I've got a lot of food coming in. When you have a lot of resources coming in, you can perform at a much higher level. And this is why it makes sense to chase performance goals once you're in investment. The worst thing you can do is chase crazy performance goals when you're trying to diet. When people are trying to diet and do like marathon training and do, Tour de France training, it's just, you know what I mean? Like it may on paper sound, well, that's a good thing because you're doing so much activity, you're definitely going to lose body fat. It doesn't work that way. We've never seen that work in practice, because these two processes are very differently. You get fat loss first. So you listen to part 1 of the podcast. We were very, very heavily focused on fat loss only. But once you've got all the fat off, now you can start to look at other avenues at where you can allocate your energy. And as Ed said earlier, it doesn't have to just be hardcore muscle building. Yes, you can still put time into muscle building, which is brilliant. But if you want longevity in this game and you want to have you just want to have a bit more fun, you can still weight train, but you can still do other things on top of that. They give you that oomph, right? So that could be for AV, it could be that he becomes a professional Muay Thai fighter. Ed becomes a professional jiu-jitsu roller, I do Tour de France in a couple of years, But it's just that mindset, right? Of, okay, cool, I have a performance goal that I can chase. And that in and of itself is also going to keep you in shape.
It's also just knowing that it's okay to just experiment with things. Like you don't need, if you're going to commit to, if you're going to do a few boxing classes, it doesn't mean you need to commit to 6 months. It's not quite the same as like committing to a nutrition, the idea of a new nutrition. This is when you can try a bunch of different things, and it can be really beneficial for the mind, just like trying new things, as long as you've got that base of resistance training that you still got in there. And I also think, even if you do want to build muscle and you want to try a few other things, I think back in the day, I was very much like, the only thing I can do in my activity is weight training. Anything else is going to take away from building gains. And the reality is, a few boxing classes, a few, 5-a-side football matches, or whatever you fancy doing, it's not going to detract from your muscle building for the most part. You may just have a few, you may just need to factor in some recovery. But the reality is, for most of us, we're not trying to be professional bodybuilders. So we don't need to worry about, you might gain that extra pound 1 week later, right? It's just not going to happen in the real world. And I find the more fun you have with your training overall in the week, you actually gain more muscle because you're probably less stressed. And I find that the more fun you have with your activity in general, so long as you've got some progressive element in there a couple of times a week, you will probably build all the muscle that you ever wanted.
Yeah. Or that you'll ever need, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense on paper that anything else, and I was definitely in that mindset, is going to detract. And I think that on paper it is the case, but like you said, in reality, the amount it detracts is so outweighed by the consistency that you can then, go with that routine. As we all know, if you go and hammer muscle building really intensely, that's all you think about for 3 months. 3 months in, you're bored of it, you're asking for a mini cart, you want to sack it off, you're missing gym sessions, whatever. But if you can just play football a couple of times a week as well as do some gym, you can stay in that cycle for 2 years. You might build muscle slightly slower, but 2 years of muscle growth is always going to kill 3 months, however optimal.
I have like one big regret from university where my dissertation was based on like measuring people's fat oxidation, and part of the test was you run on the treadmill, right? And
VO2 max test.
You're testing all these variables and RER and all this sort of stuff. But I was so obsessed with, and I was putting everyone through this, and I was measuring all these variables, but I was so obsessed with building muscle, I refused to do it for myself. I was like, if I do this myself, I'm not going to be able to. It's going to catapolize my legs, and it's going to affect my training. So I'm not going to take part in this experiment myself. And I look back, I was like, that would have been such a cool thing to just go through, because there were so many like very data points that we tracked and everything. And I look back, I think, what was I even thinking, right? One session wouldn't have caused me any harm, but I was so like single-minded, and it's probably detracting from my gains. And I look back and think, when I was most relaxed about my training, in terms of like things I'd do outside of that, those 3-4 weight training sessions a week, that's when my best gains came.
Yeah, on that, I got to credit Alberto Nunez with this quote. But he talks about having a happiness portfolio where you have various things in your life that give you happiness. So if training is like the only thing that gives you happiness, funnily enough, you actually won't make as much progress as the approach that you just took. So if you got other variables in your life that you can take joy from, and then training is sort of on top of that, you can actually make probably just as good, if not better progress, because it's not your whole world. It doesn't engulf you. You know what I mean? And we've seen this happen before, right? Like when you really, we've all been there, when we obsess over something so much that we suffocate it, right? Like I like the analogy of, when you get a puppy, you love it so much, you want to squeeze it so tight, but if you squeeze it too tight, you kill it. It's the same thing with this sort of stuff, right? Like you have to have other aspects of your life that bring you happiness. And I think that's another thing that people should look into during their investment phase, and their lifestyle solution is like, okay, where else can you find happiness and joy? Everyone should be doing this anyway, but I think it becomes more clear when you finally do have enough food coming in, you're at a healthier body weight, healthier body fat, you can think better. You need to ask yourself, okay, what actually brings me happiness in my life? And then work on cultivating more of that. I know it sounds really hippy dippy, but I think it can go it can go a long way. And it also carries over to your training progress, because you have that as like an anchor, but you also have other anchors around you.
No, definitely. And I think also just having some form of cardiovascular training in your muscle building phase, even if it's, that's the main aim. If you do want to go hardcore bodybuilding, whatever, keeping at least a baseline of cardiovascular health is going to be so important, not just for health, which is obviously important at all stages of life, but especially like a lot of our members progressing through life, at various ages, especially the later you get on in life, making sure that you're staying on top of those markers is going to be more and more important. But also in terms of actual just training performance and recovery, like you can't do a hard set on a leg press if you can't breathe after more than 6 reps, really. Like big movements, lower body, back training. If your cardiovascular fitness is so bad, it's probably going to limit your performance in the gym, which is ultimately the main driver for muscle building as well. So it doesn't mean you need to be running marathons, but having some form of like cardio in there is probably going to be beneficial as well.
Even just that day to day, right? If you're running after a bus, you don't want to be that person who, you're the most jacked person on the bus, but you're coming in drenched in sweat and heaving just because you got to run a bit.
I was that person once. I remember I couldn't cross the road without my knees hurting. I couldn't run across the road, but I could squat and deadlift the most I ever could.
So what does an investment phase look like then for different people, and what should you consider to kind of really get yourself set up for a productive one? Let's say you're coming out of you're in consolidation, you're coming out of consolidation, heading into investment. What does that even look like?
I think first off is to have a look at your checkpoint in terms of like how you're looking and feeling, and if you then want to progress in terms of muscle mass, or you're quite happy with your current levels, that's probably going to dictate how much emphasis needs to go towards kind of resistance training. But then I'd also then just start looking at, a bit like we said in the first podcast, about not just looking at the end results of like, all right, I want to be jacked, or I want to be really fit, or I want to have this belt in jiu-jitsu or whatever it is, but looking at the process and like, what do I find fun? what fits in with my lifestyle, what am I going to enjoy being consistent with, and then trying to just pair that up. Because I think everyone says, "Oh, I want more muscle." Yeah, like everyone wants to be jacked, right? But if you haven't really enjoyed resistance training up to your checkpoint, you find the gym a bit of a chore. Is it really going to happen? Probably not. You're going to have to try and push yourself through it, not really enjoying it. So in that case, why don't you just put resistance training at baseline? Maybe that's 2 to 3 sessions a week. You try hard, and maybe even you look at other options for your resistance training rather than just traditional body composition style training. Maybe that is you go to some classes or you do some CrossFit or something like that. Now, on paper, they're not going to be as optimal for building muscle. But as we've said before, it's around like if you're going to enjoy it, you'll turn up to it, you'll do it consistently for 2 years, you probably build more muscle doing CrossFit than you will just skipping and half-assing bodybuilding style training. So it's definitely going back to what we said in that last one around the mindset. Same as for fat loss, look at that, or any goal, just look at the process. What would you enjoy committing to? And then pair that up to the goal would be my thought.
Some of these classes are really good nowadays as well. They're not just the old Zumba classes where you're lifting minimal loads and not really putting resistance. Like some of these classes I see at the gym I'm at, and they look intense. And I see a lot of the guys and girls who train hard in the gym with heavy weights go to these classes. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, and they're loving it. Like, there's a really good community atmosphere. So they're definitely worth looking at. And just to follow up on that, like when would you make these decisions? Does it depend on how lean you got? Does it depend on how your consolidation is going? Is it something you do before you hit your checkpoint? Or when do you start having these like explorations of what's next? Is it once you get out of consolidation? When do you know you're ready for this?
I would always start thinking about it at the tail end of the diet. I think you're pushing hard, but I start getting excited about what happens next, because performance is such a big part of this enjoyment of this process for me. Once gym performance starts stalling, or like you're really trying to fight regressions at the end of that kind of grind period, I'm then just thinking, I can't wait till performance is thriving. So I start getting excited about that. And I feel, that's when you start to feel a bit less athletic, even though you look on pay, you on the photo, you look like
it's the biggest oxymoron.
Yeah.
You look amazing, you feel crap, you perform crap.
Yeah. And then, so that's when I start getting excited about these other things. And then, so I would already start to plan it out before then. I think how lean you get for your checkpoint then determines it slightly. If you get to a beach lean, touching on photo shoot lean kind of condition, then I'd say you're probably pretty much good to go. Maybe like take a deload the week after, and then you can probably start joining some of these classes or go down to start playing some five-a-side. If you got absolute dice, let's say you did, you probably want to start to just bring body weight up a little bit just to get back to a little bit more of a safe place. It doesn't have to be like full kind of off season or like full like where you were before you start dieting, but I think dropping a bit more of that fatigue and getting a little bit more body fat on you, it's just going to reduce the risk of injury as well as aiding performance. Because like I said, like when you on that shoot day, you looked amazing, but you weren't primed for performance. And it's the likelihood of you going out playing some five-a-side and then doing an adductor.
I remember I had to like run back early from a meeting like during the week before. I thought my legs were about to snap underneath me.
Yeah,
it's horrible, man. Yeah.
So
I would say just real quick, for someone who's in Akash's situation or similar, you're better off actually putting on a bit of weight relatively quickly, because you need to put on that extra weight to start feeling normal again. So there's no point hanging out at a super lean level if your goal is performance based. So
one person and I'd be curious to know your thoughts, and this is completely random, but Cristiano Ronaldo, right, the footballer, we all know.
Yeah
that guy's in insane condition, right, in terms of, and I'd say he's pretty damn lean, right? What do you think the thing is with him, like in terms of, do you think
he's always been very lean since
he got a genetic thing where he's very lean?
Yeah. And he's always just been very athletic his whole life. I don't think he's ever had to diet to get in shape. Do you know what I mean? So I think he's just gotten very accustomed to that level of leanness. But he's not like bodybuilding lean standards. You know what I mean? Like,
but he's
in
about
good shape.
3 weeks out or so, right? Like he could easily.
Sometimes, not all the time. I've seen no.
Well, Yeah, you know what I
I
mean,
know, I
right?
know. I follow Cristiano quite a bit. Like I think he's a lot of us can learn a lot from just how he lives his life. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think he's just someone who has stayed in shape his whole life. He's never got fat. He's always been super active, and he's just potentially gotten used to being at that level. And but again, most athletic people are relatively lean, you know, because they've managed to potentially just stay there their entire lives, and maybe they just naturally gravitate more towards that, but they're never shredded, you know what I mean? That's, and we know, you know, there's a big difference between like Cristiano Ronaldo lean compared to like what you got down.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
world of difference, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's crazy, but
It's
yeah,
more
no, I
because
think he's
it's not
great.
like a 10-second sprint, is it? It's like
No,
it's a
it's
decent little endeavor that
unbelievable. He's unbelievably fit.
it's
Yeah,
just nuts, isn't it? Like you're playing a 90-minute
incredible.
game, and I know it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
non-stop running, but you're pretty much jogging at least most of the time. I know he might be walking,
yeah,
but
yeah. No, he's super fit, super fit.
it's
But
insane,
yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but again, look at a lot of marathon runners too. A lot of marathon runners are extremely lean too.
But they don't have the
Uh,
muscle,
uh,
and I think Cristiano is
exactly.
impressive because he's got
Yeah,
muscle as well.
some muscle. You know, like yeah. But I would say, but he's also got that blend of yeah, muscularity and leanness. I would say Gareth Bale is another one who's very similar to that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
again, he's super explosive, super quick. But
Fast
yeah,
twitch
there
type.
are
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. There are some anomalies, and I think over time, someone like Cristiano, I think his joints and his body have just got used to the impact of soccer. Because I used to play soccer back in the day too. It's more
Yeah.
just it's getting accustomed to that way of changing direction. It's very demanding. It's very still to this day. Like I would be more fatigued from like a soccer match than like a hard cardio session or any sort of resistance training. I would
Do you
be
think
out for
that's
like
why you
almost a
can stay
weekend.
quite lean year round? You
I
can
think
stay
so.
very lean and perform at a very high level.
I think so. I think so. My threshold is like the body fat that I can sit at and perform at a good level is quite low. I would say
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
I think it's just genetic and a nurturing thing there going on, you know. But there's still a point for me. If I drop too lean, I will see a detriment in performance, even if I don't want to admit it to myself, you know. So
That's the
yeah.
thing, isn't it? It's like I think you wrote this in your article. It's like guys will completely ignore their subjective feelings. And when I read that line, I was just like, this is literally me. You know, it's like guys have the propensity to just ignore subjective feelings, but the reality is, if they get asked whether they want a burger or have sex, they'll choose the burger.
Yeah.
And that's when you know
That's
you're
how you
screwed.
know.
You know you're
That's how you
screwed.
know. That's how you know as a guy. So, but yeah, I think yeah. To round about that, I think he's just a combination of extreme fitness, extreme leanness. But again, yeah, I think is he lean because he's fit, or is he fit because he's always been lean? You know, it's
Yeah.
like the chicken or the egg sort of thing, right? So
just to bring that into context again, so if you've got super lean, then wait obviously till you can think properly, and if you're beach lean, you're pretty much ready to go.
yeah, it's how you feel though. It's how you feel.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
You know,
I would
Because
say
for many
I
people,
would,
getting beach lean is like it's not just losing 10 kilos; it's losing
no.
20, 30.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's hard.
I would make sure that you get to a point where sleep is good. Food focus is improving. Doesn't have to be perfect at that point, but like yeah, sleep is good. You feel a bit more recovered.
Sex drive.
Yeah, like sex drive, desire to push hard physically, so physically exert yourself.
That's a big one, actually. Yeah.
Once those things are back, and that might for some people just be a deload post shoot, and then you're back in the game and you're all good. If you got like say Akash level of dice, then you might need a few kilos back on you just before that comes. But then I think that also just touches on a good point of when picking these things is also just factoring injuries, because I know we've touched on it before, is when you do these kind of maybe more adventurous stuff, or especially like more competitive sport things, there is a risk of injury in there as well, and then it's just balancing that up against your other goals you've got. Because I think
It's always
people think the gym is dangerous, but if you actually look at data around like hours in the gym per injury, it's very, very safe. And unless you're an idiot in terms of using bad form, you control everything. You control how many reps you do, you control the weight that's on the bar, you control the speed of it. Everything's kind of like got a safety measure in place, whether it's like safety pins. You know, compare that to say Ivan's that around random changes of direction in football. The stimulus isn't in your control. You don't know if the person's going to go left or right or pass or what. So all of this stuff then actually increases the risk of injury for all these things way more. And so although it's really fun, if you really want to get really strong legs in the gym, and you also want to play football. Doesn't mean you can't do both, but you just got to factor in that you may have some weeks out across the year where you've rolled an ankle. You've done.
Did you do your ankle in rugby recently?
Yeah, and
A
that's
couple months ago.
that's something that I haven't really fully let go of my head, because I'd love to still be playing rugby. I've had so many injuries when I was younger that I kind of realized like just normal rugby is just, the trade-off's not worth it for me. Definitely not. So then I tried a bit of touch rugby over the summer and really, really enjoyed it. I loved being competitive, just playing some form of rugby again. Also just social, like doing an evening activity, just being, just mixing with some other people, having a laugh. Really enjoyed it. But I rolled my ankle on the sessions. And it basically ended up being eventually not too bad, but that night I ended up in A&E. So I thought my foot was like swelling up, it was all gone white, I was in more pain than I think I've ever been in. And so then afterwards on the way home, I'm thinking like, that's definitely never worth doing again. But then over time you start getting that itch to go back. So I haven't fully decided, because in terms of fun, it's one of the funnest things I can do. But it's just, is it worth them potentially these injury risks? I don't know. I haven't fully figured out what I'm going to do with that.
For me, in 2018, I was dabbling with. So when I was younger, I played tennis like 5-6 times a week. 2018, I thought I'm making a return to the court. The fourth session in, I was doing a serve and I just felt my calf like pop. I was like, oh, never went back again, because just like it was like a micro tear on my calf. It just like this is when I was full on off season as well. And I was so pissed. I was like,
I don't think we realize just how much force goes into these activities. You know what I mean? Like the change of direction. Yeah, especially tennis court. You wouldn't think it, but like, that's hard. That's hard on the shoulders too. That impact, you having to unleash all the time. Like,
I think that's one of the reasons why I have a bad shoulder on my right side, because I was playing so much and my right side just got hammered.
Wouldn't be surprised. It's baseball pitches. I think they've even got like, I don't know if it's like their shoulders have like a life capacity or something, like how many pitches they can really throw in a lifetime without just running into issues.
I've read that before.
I don't know. Yeah, I've read that somewhere.
Eric Cressy.
But I think Eric Cressy said that. But on back to Ed's point with regards to like gym injuries, this is another crazy stat. I think to piggyback on that, I think the biggest reported injury in the gym is people dropping a weight on their foot. Like that's the biggest cause of injuries in most recreational gyms, outside of just people doing dumb shit, But
the other day, as in it was just I was just lucky that the impact wasn't too heavy. I was with Sean deadlifting. We had 3 plates on the bar each side, but he took all 3 plates on one side off, and the other thing just came flying, and I literally just like I got it just in time, but it caught me just a bit, but not enough to like really cause damage. I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you waiting for me on the other side. And then I remember you said at the Void workshop, you said something like, don't have more than 45 kilos on one side. And when you said that to me, I didn't know that stat. So that's stuck with me ever since I must have heard you shout about it on the other side of the gym.
I just suddenly saw so many people obviously training, and all of them just, and the gym is really nice. It's got so many racks, but it's like next to each other. And I remember being at uni and there was 2 racks next to each other. And one guy had obviously just stripped off one side, and the bar had flipped, done almost like a 360 and like landed vertically down in the middle of the rack next to it. And the guy who was using that was resting, so he'd step back. But if he had been doing a set, it would have taken him out. And the guy who had missed went absolutely nuts. And I can kind of understand why, because potentially could have killed him. But it just literally just pulled all the weights off one side, and it just span.
Well, I fractured my little toe, dropping a 20 kilo on back in the day. So I completely get your stat. I think there's so many I'm quite clumsy like that. There's so many near misses I've had.
Like on that, this is nothing like that. But I was one gym I was working at a long time ago. Someone left the treadmill on at full pelt. So they must have been just doing sprints or something, and they for some reason left the treadmill on full pelt, and someone walks in, headphones in, ready just to first day back in the gym. It's like, I'm gonna do it this time, this is it. Steps on this treadmill, bang, it just absolutely floors it. Like, and I don't know what happened to that person after that, but insane. Like, step on a treadmill going full pelt.
I can imagine loads of accidents on the treadmill.
Yeah. But it's just like things like that. You just.
We have one at my parents' house, and my relatives are there, and they have a little. They have a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, And they were like, "Oh yeah, just walk on the treadmill." I said, "Don't." I was like, "Honestly, don't." Like, I know you think it's fun. I was like, "Just don't do it. I know what's gonna happen." And they kept saying, and that made the parent want to do it even more.
Yeah.
And I was like, "I know it's gonna happen." And what happened? Literally, like within, as soon as she let go of the hand, fell off,
Boom.
crying nonstop. And I was like, "I told you, like, don't do it. It's gonna cause an injury."
Let them learn.
Yeah. How do we get onto that topic? Oh, injuries.
I don't know.
Yeah, injuries in sports.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, totally agree. And like when I did my running, when I had that whole, let me try run a half marathon in 2019. By the end of it, my knees were so shot I couldn't even train legs. And then in 2020, I did it with 5-a-side. My adductor got pulled.
Yeah. But the lesson here is not to avoid these activities.
No.
It's just to understand that you gotta take these things slowly. And this is why a lot of people will know, a lot of our members, they know that we don't recommend running a lot of the time as that form of cardio. And it's not because we hate running or we're against it, this and that. It's just, for most people, they're trying to do it as a weight loss tool. When in fact, if you've never really learned how to run and you haven't got the technique down packed, it can actually be just more damaging than not, So, but once you've got and this is why we encourage things like cycling or rowing or low impact sort of activity if during that phase. So not only do you minimize the impact on the joints, but you can still build up some really good cardiovascular fitness so that when you do finally invest and you want to learn how to run, that can be one of your investment goals. Cool. I want to run a marathon next year, but I'm going to start bare bones. I'm not just going to go start running because I think I can just go out and run. Running is technical. You need to start slow. You need to build the volume up over time, just like resistance training. You need to let your joints and tendons get accustomed to that load again. And then you build that up and then you train for that. That can be another fantastic investment goal. Yeah. But you got to start bare bones, and not hurt yourself.
So I think a lot of this appeals a lot to those who may want to build a bit of muscle, may want to get a bit stronger. They want to mostly just learn how to build a lifestyle solution to stay in shape. There are going to be a few listening who are like, guys, I don't want to play any sport. I just want to build muscle. For these people now, what do they need to consider? If we ask the questions, do you have what it takes to really build muscle? What are the things that they need to pay attention to, outside of the fact that they probably got some useful lessons from not being too obsessed with that goal and not thinking you can't do anything else? I think that's an important lesson in itself. But let's say that they've understood that. What's the key thing here?
I think letting go of tangible weights on this, like weight measurements on the scale for the moment. I think it's good to have like a ballpark of where you want to end up in like 12 months or 24 months, whatever it is. But I think obsessing over hitting a certain percentage every month, I think people get lost in the weeds on that, in my opinion. And I think they lose track of what they need to do that day or that week to continue getting better. So I think the investment phase is a perfect example of how focusing on the process will eventually end up, resulting in a fantastic outcome eventually. But it's a long-term thing. You're literally investing, right? But I think just because it's a lofty goal. Building muscle is a lofty goal, and it's not. Again, it takes a lot of patience to really make that goal smaller, more achievable every week. I think just focusing on performance each week, first and foremost, is going to be the best metric.
I think people who want to build muscle got to get ready for it, and they're let's say they're at the beginning of the road, so they've come from a skinny fat place, or they're skinny lean, or basically they've gotten lean and they realize they don't have much muscle. Which for the most people, as we always say, most people overestimate how much muscle they have, underestimate how much body fat they have. Let's say for those people, they've got to be ready. Let's be honest, for a 7 to 10 year journey of potentially 2 to 3 year cycles of investment. And that's the reality of it. It's probably 7 years of going, 7 years, 5-7 years. If you nail everything and you live like a bodybuilder, 7 to 10 years for most of us of just diligent getting stronger. And the reality is you need to look at 4 to 6 key lifts. And if you're doing 10 chin-ups with 5 kilos, you need to get that to 20 kilos for 10 reps. That's it. That's literally, that'll build your back. For your legs, just find what works for you. Let's say it's a hack squat. You've got to go from 3 plates to 5 plates. There's literally nothing else you need to worry about, right? But doing that is going to take a long time. Like getting from 3 plates to 5 plates, we're just talking random numbers here, but 3 plates, 5 plates will take you a long time. But that's the only thing that matters. You can gain all the weight you like, but if you haven't done that bit, there's no There's no muscle gain there to be said.
And that bit comes from the
Process.
gym. What you process what you do in the gym each day, each week, each month, each year, and you slowly build that over time. And I highly encourage anyone that's listening with this obsession of I need to be a certain weight to look a certain way. It's like no. Focus on just becoming stronger each week, and remember your training is going to be the stimulus or the main driver of your results. Nutrition is going to be just a nice additive, right? Yeah, we need to be eating enough to gain weight over time and to fuel performance, but many people are very disappointed when we tell them, oh, it's not 10,000 calories a day, my friend. It's maybe 200, 300 calories on top of your predicted maintenance as a starting point, and then we adjust from there. But it's nothing crazy. Like nutritional jumps don't have to be anything insane to spark more performance or more muscle growth. Usually you're going to have to address sleep, stress, other lifestyle factors that contribute to your performance. Nutrition doesn't have to change as much as people think. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, no, I agree. You literally just eat the same thing for ages. And the only time you really make jumps is if you've really milked that logbook, and that means you're so anxious before going to the gym, and even with all the drive and the psych and everything, and you still can't beat your numbers, then you're all right, let's add some body weight. And you've got everything else dialed in. But that's the reality of it. I mean, I remember my most aggressive muscle building phases. Like it's just hell when you're training, right? Like every set is just hell, isn't it? Like it's basically in that diet, that final bit of like a grind where you're holding on to your strength, but you got that mentality literally year round. That's why it's easy to maintain your body.
Yeah,
it's easy to maintain your body than it is to build your body. Maintaining your body doesn't require much at all, does it? You can just kind of coast along for ages. Building it is another ballgame.
Yeah, any adaptation, it's much harder to get it than it is to maintain it.
Yeah,
much harder.
And that's why the biggest bottleneck for muscle building for most people, like Ivan said, isn't going to be food. It's going to be what you do when you're 5 reps into a set. Like, do you bottle it or do you keep pushing? And until that is in a good place, the food doesn't even really matter. But I think the main thing, if you want to go into on a big muscle building, is do you love the process of just being consistent with food, training, sleep? Do you want to be really consistent with that for like 2 years? Because I think consistency is more important in muscle building than it is actually in fat loss, as long as you're ticking those basics principles. You need to consistently be in a calorie deficit, but if
you can hack your way there,
you can kind of hack that. The training, as long as you provide some kind of stimulus every few days, you move around a bit, but you can get away with a little less sleep. Like if you want to build muscle, like you need to be making sure your recovery's good, sleep's good, got to get them calories in, you got to be going hard in the gym.
I actually think if you take a holistic approach to muscle building, you actually improve your life even more, because you have to force real change in your behaviors. Like with fat loss, like you said, you can go out till 3 a.m, have 2-3 hours of sleep, and just make sure you're in a calorie deficit, and you should be okay. And you just sort of turn up at the gym. You can't do the same thing if you're trying to build muscle, because you won't make any strength gains. So you have to really. What was that?
I was going to say, many people are shocked when we tell them that alcohol is actually more detrimental during an investment phase than process phase, because of its impact, right? Yeah, if you have a few drinks but you stay in an energy deficit, you'll still lose body fat that week, right? But if you have a few drinks on Saturday night, you get pissed, you're going to not only hamper your recovery. If you train that day, the recovery from that session is going to be subpar. And even if you go to the gym the next day, which people are like, I'll just go to the gym next day and I feel great. Yeah, that's great. You may feel like you can provide a good stimulus, but again, you cannot recover from that stimulus optimally. And it can take you a couple of days to actually recover from that.
You can only do it when you're 18.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do it when you're in your 30s or
40s. Exactly. When your testosterone is like through the roof as well. But you still can't like circumvent that. And I don't think people understand that. They go, oh yeah, once I'm in investment phase, alcohol is not going to harm me. Brilliant. I'm just going to drink all the time and still get gains. Like, nah, he's become a sloppy mess again very quickly.
So I think that's important. If you've got muscle building ambitions, just get ready to be even more consistent than you were when you're in fat loss. If you've got lifestyle solution ambitions and you're happy with the bit gains, you really just want to crack how to stay in shape for life, then I think you've got a lot more options available to you than you probably think. And the gym, whilst it should be there in some capacity, a couple of times a week, it doesn't need to be the main driver of your activity or your resistance training. It can just be a part of a wider solution.
And that's where potentially looking at how you want your week to look rather than your goal can be even potentially a good way of looking at it. You know, like what do you want your life to look like long term in terms of just like a basic routine? I quite enjoy the gym. I'll go like 3 times a week, but then I'd like to play football with the boys on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and there's a fun spin class on a Saturday. Okay, brilliant. That's like 6 sessions a week. That's actually like pretty active. Hit like an okay step count as well. Control your nutrition. Is that going to be optimal for building muscle? No, but can you still build a good amount of muscle if your training's good? Yeah, 100%. So there you're probably in like a lifestyle solution with a slight bias towards building some muscle. You're going to have loads of fun because you see your mates a couple of times a week for football. You're staying fit with that and the spin class, and you're also building muscle at a suboptimal but still significant rate. Like, brilliant. But just don't expect to then step on the Olympia stage in 2 years. And that's where you can then start to adjust your goals in line with that.
Brilliant. I think that's a wrap. Any final closing comments on muscle building investment?
Get massive.
Get massive. I'd also say, don't obsess with the mirror every single week and every single month as well. You need to understand that you got to go through a bit of a softer stage to eventually get the returns later on. You have to accept that to some degree, and it's not a bad thing. It just is what it is.
Yeah, just don't take that to the extreme and stop taking pictures or stop weighing yourself and stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you just got to make sure you're not obsessing over it.
But I think that's where actually not obsessing, but focusing more on performance can be so good.
Yeah.
One, from a body image, because you can actually start liking this slightly softer look, because you're like, you know what, this body can allow me to bench press this, squat this,
exactly. You
sprint
relate
this time, run this, do this on the bike, and then you actually start loving your body. You don't mind it looking like slightly like less lean because you like what it can give you, and it also stops it going too far, because if you do get too sloppy, it's not going to be positive performance.
But you feel it too. Yeah, you feel it too. Yeah.
Funny thing is that whole thing of liking what your body can do at a certain body weight can actually stop you from, when you do want to get lean, in getting lean. I see this a lot with men, especially, who, you know, it's when you latch on to like, I don't want to go below 170 pounds, or I don't want to go below 80 kilos because X, Y, Z. So you just got to, basically the key is detachment from that.
Mm-hmm.